INICT July 2021 PSM Community Medicine. Hello friends, I am Dr. Vivek Jain, Faculty of Community Medicine with the online platform PrepLadder. Now today we will be discussing all the subject related questions from community medicine which appeared in the INICT exam for the July 2021. Now before we go ahead, just an impression of mine towards this exam after having discussed the paper extensively with the students. First, I felt that there were total around 70 to 80 questions which were one-liners, typically NBE pattern style. There were around 15 to 18 match the following two column type of questions. There were total around 40 IBQs, image based questions, and along with that around 20 to 25 were clinical scenario based questions. This is taking into consideration all the 19 subjects out of the 200 question paper. When we look at PSM, the paper was quite easy for PSM, but there were few questions which were moderate level because they had never appeared in the exam earlier. Most of the questions, when we look for the whole paper, they were on the expected lines, and around 40% of the paper was a repeat from exact same questions or same topics. There were very few totally unheard type of questions in the paper. In fact, out of the 200 questions, I was able to reconstruct 22 questions from the subject of PSM with the help of students. Out of these 22 questions, 18 questions were direct from the subject of PSM and 4 were overlapped due to national health programs with other subjects. Before we start, first I must thank all the subscriber students of Dr. Vivek Jain PSM app who helped me reconstruct this paper. Also a big thanks is due to the Facebook groups of PrepLadder Premium Club and NEET PG INICET DNB 2021 group. Also on my Instagram Vivek Jain PSM group students also helped me a lot, and also I must give thanks to the Telegram groups Dr. Vivek Jain Sir PSM and top educators. So let us start with PSM questions now. Coming on your screen right now is question number 1. This was an image based question where natural history of the disease was given. Read the diagram carefully. Then they marked A, B, C and D and asked what does point C indicate? What is written on the image? Let me show it to you in a slightly bigger form. Now, when we look at the natural history of disease, it implies a disease runs its course without any active intervention from our side. So, first is the stage of susceptibility, and the second stage is stage of subclinical disease. Between susceptibility and the subclinical disease, what must be there? Very right, it must be the point of exposure. So, point A is exposure time. Point B, this is the stage of subclinical disease, and if you look at this third part is stage of clinical disease, subclinical, clinical. So when subclinical will turn into clinical, very right, this point number C which was asked in the exam is a point between subclinical and clinical. So this will be very right, onset of symptoms. If you look at the fourth part or stage of this natural history, that is stage of recovery, disability or death. So what must be point D in between? That must be the usual time of diagnosis. So when we go back to our question now, so now we can say this point C indicates onset of symptoms of disease. Friends, you must know point D, this is the usual time of diagnosis. Point C is when symptoms appear, but disease has already started in the body. Pathogenesis is already taking place in this subclinical phase also. So if you can detect a disease earlier there by using screening test, then this gap between the earliest possible detection and usual time of diagnosis, this will how much earlier you are detecting a disease. This advantage of screening test is known as lead time. Let us move to question number 2 now. pentavalent vaccine contains? As the word is telling you, penta means 5. When we look at National Health Program of India, that is RCH program, under that NIS, National Immunization Schedule, many vaccines are given right from birth till 16 years of age. Then girls also get again vaccine in the form of DT during pregnancy. Now in this immunization schedule, first year of life, that is infancy, is very, very important for primary immunization completion. Now in that, pentavalent vaccine is given at what time? It is given at 6, 10, 14 weeks. Now 3 doses are given. Pentavalent 1, pentavalent 2, pentavalent 3 at 6, 10, 14 weeks. Now what is the advantage of using pentavalent vaccine? It is actually combining 5 vaccines together. What are these 5 vaccines? These are diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, hepatitis B, Haemophilus influenzae B. So answer to this question is choice number C, DPT, hepatitis B, Haemophilus influenzae B. Why we are combining them? Because by chance all of them have same route. Intramuscular for administration, dose is 0.5 ml, anterolateral aspect of thigh, middle 1/3. When we look at this particular vaccine, pentavalent, for this vaccine, please remember a very commonly asked question. Open vial policy is applicable. In this, diphtheria is 25 Loeffler units, that is equivalent to 30 international units. Pertussis is 16 OU, that is equivalent to 4 international units, and tetanus toxoid is 2.5 Loeffler units, equivalent to 40 international units. Also remember HBsAg, that is rDNA, this is 10 microgram, and 5th component, that is polysaccharide, that is for Haemophilus influenza B, this is also 10 microgram. Also it is adsorbed on aluminum phosphate, and thiomersal is used as a preservative in this particular vaccine. Now 3 clinical scenarios I must tell you for future examinations of INI-CT. If a child has received, or if an infant has received first dose as DPT, not pentavalent, then in second and third dose also at 10 and 14 weeks, please continue with DPT separately. Don't give pentavalent now. So if pentavalent has to be given, it should be first, second as well as third dose also. Second clinical scenario, if a child is a case of delayed immunization, he comes to your clinic for the first time at 10 months of age. You know, not even a single vaccine he has received. Now, should we start pentavalent? Yes, start at 10 months of age, give at 11 and 12 months of age also. Clinical scenario number 3, an infant comes to you just before completion of 12 months, totally unimmunized. Will you start pentavalent now? Definitely yes. Give the first dose, give second and third dose at a gap of 4 weeks each. Question number 3, which of the following is discarded in black bin? Friends, if I look at the older biomedical waste management guidelines of 1998, earlier we used to have category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Out of those, category 5, 9 and 10, biomedical waste used to go in the black bin. But under the new guidelines, black bin does not exist in the biomedical waste category. Rather, it is used to dispose of other waste. Now we have 3 bins outside the biomedical waste for general waste. The green bin, this is for wet waste, which is biodegradable. Second, white bin, this is actually dry waste, which is non-biodegradable. And the third, black bin, this is for other type of waste, which is household, domestic, hazardous waste. So this will include waste like paper, wrapper, packing material, cartons. So friends, when we look at this black bin asked in this question, currently it is used to dispose of wrappers, paper. So answer to this question will be paper and wrapper of gloves. A totally new question was asked for the first time on MMU, mobile medical units. Friends, when we look at mobile medical units, These are a moving vehicle in which adequate facilities have been given for diagnosis and treatment, and this has been launched under which program? You can see the logo of that program on the van also here. This is National Health Mission, initially launched as a part of NRHM, National Rural Health Mission. Now what you need to know about these MMUs? Now these mobile medical units were launched to provide healthcare services to remote inaccessible areas of our country. So when we look at rural areas, this will include hilly areas, tribal areas, or other similar areas which are difficult to be reached through routine health services. When we look at urban areas, the target population is the marginalized communities. For these MMUs, the norm given is that there should be one mobile medical unit per 10 lakh population of a district. Similarly, 2 such units for 20 lakh, 3 such units for population up to 30 lakh and so on. There is a capping of maximum 5 MMUs per district under this program. Now, what are the healthcare services envisaged or provision to be delivered through these mobile medical units? Number 1 is diagnostic services. So, this will include glucose, urine routine microscopy, pregnancy testing, hemoglobin estimation, weight estimation, height estimation, even if there is possibility, visual acuity testing and rapid diagnostic kit. Beside diagnostic services, sputum smear collection. Also, they are supposed to carry out screening above the age of 35 years for hypertension, diabetes and cancers, and wherever possible, dental as well as eye care services could also be included under MMU's provisions. Now, how the financials were decided for these MMUs under National Health Mission? Now, there are 3 different models. Number 1 is this MMU could be fully government operated. Number 2, there is a possibility that these MMUs could be CAPEX, that is capital expenditure, drugs and supplies. They are given by the government, whereas operations will be done by the private sector. Or the third model is that the drugs and supplies are maintained by the government, but CAPEX, capital expenditure, that is long-term investment. OPEX, operating expenses. CAPEX is capital expenses, which is one-time long-term payment. OPEX is operating expenditure for day-to-day basis, and operations, they will be managed by private sector. So when we look at this particular question, now you can read the choices carefully. Which of the following statement is correct? Look at statement 1, government operated. This is correct. Look at number 2, CAPEX, capital expenditure, drugs and medical supplies by government while the operations is by private. This is also correct. Look at number 3, drugs, medical supply by government, but the expenditure CAPEX, OPEX as well as operations will be by private. This is also correct. Look at choice number 4, fully funded private. No, this is not allowed. So it is actually a joint public-private partnership. So best answer to this question will be choice number D. 1, 2 and 3 statements are correct. Officer in charge of this MMU is Chief District Medical Officer. He will take help from the medical officer of a nearby PHC also. When we look at the staffing pattern of this particular MMU, this includes 1 MBBS medical officer, preferably female. Along with her, there should be 1 GNM, 1 lab technician, 1 pharmacist and 1 driver also. The cost of the van has been calculated to be around rupees 24 lakh per unit, and in northeastern states of our country, it goes up to 28 lakh rupees per unit. Then we look at question, match the STD color coded kits with their numbers. Friends, when we look at STD color coded kits, these are total 7 under the STD control component of National AIDS Control Program. They are provided through Suraksha Clinic also. So what are these 7 kits? These 7 kits are given specific numbers 1 till 7. Kit number 1 is grey. This covers which syndrome? This covers urethral discharge, anorectal discharge, cervical discharge and scrotal swelling. Kit number 2 is green colored kit. Green color, this is trichomonas, vaginal discharge. Kit number 3 is white. This covers GUD, genital ulcer disease, which is non-herpetic. Kit number 4 is blue. This also covers genital ulcerative disease, which is non-herpetic but allergic to penicillin. Kit number 5 is red. This covers genital ulcerative disease but which is herpetic, related to herpes. Kit number 6 is yellow. This covers lower abdominal pain, PID. And kit number 7, black. This covers inguinal bubo. So now the question becomes easy. You just have to match the two columns correctly. So white will be genito-ulcerative disease, which is non-herpetic. Gray will be kit number 1, urethral or cervical discharge. Green, this will be vaginal discharge, trichomonas vaginalis, I told you. And yellow will be kit number 6, lower abdominal pain. So correct answer to this question is choice number D, A2, B1, C4, D3. Friends, in this particular exam, there was a totally new question asked for the first time from equivalence margin graph. They gave you a graph and they asked you some statements. Which of them are correct? A represents superiority of new treatment, I represents inferiority, E represents non-inferior treatment, and C is conclusive. Now to understand this, first let us look at a zoom version of this particular graph. Friend, this was the equivalence margin graph they have asked. Now before making you understand what this graph is, let me first take you to theory of different types of comparative randomized controlled trials. These are of 3 types. So when you are doing a comparative analysis of 2 drugs, new drug, old drug, there are 3 types of major these trials. First is superiority trial. What does superiority trial try to prove? That new drug is better than older drug. Second type of trial is non-inferiority trial. It says new drug is as good as old drug. And what is equivalence trial? It says that new drug is same as old drug. Both are absolutely same. Out of these, maximum success has been found when we undertake non-inferiority trials. Now, when we calculate the results by comparing these 2 drugs, new drug, old drug, in non-inferiority trial, we make a graph known as equivalence margin graph, and it looks like this. Now, let us first try to understand the legends of this graph. On the right side of this graph, this is new drug A, the better side, if it is having a better outcome than the older drug. On the left side of the graph is again new drug A, but here it is having a worse outcome as compared to the older drug B. This benchmark is where we take relative risk to be 1. Or in other words, simple I can say, difference between the both the drugs is 0. If you can see, there is one more dotted line on this graph, this one, known as delta or non-inferiority margin. What is this delta non-inferiority margin indicating? This indicates the smallest evidence of inferiority of the new drug. That means new drug is inferior. It is not acceptable as a treatment. Now, how to interpret this graph? Now look at A, B, C, and D. When we look at these 4 plots on this particular forest plot, you will find all the 4 along with this confidence interval or margin is on the right side. The right side means new drug is better, and this is away from the difference 0 relative risk 1. This implies the new drug is actually superior to the older drug B. Now look at uppermost line I. This is beyond the delta margin also, NI margin also. So this indicates the new drug is inferior. I'll again repeat. If the drug result shows it lies on the right side of the relative risk 1 or difference 0, then the new drug is superior. But even if it lies to the left of the delta NI margin, which indicates inferiority of the new drug or the unacceptability as a treatment, then that indicates new drug is inferior to the older drug. Look at now line E and line F. Here the results of the drug are touching or crossing relative risk 1, difference 0, and lies some portion towards the delta margin or delta error also. So these indicate non-inferiority of the new drug as compared to older drug. And when we look at G and H, they are not even touching the difference 0 relative risk 1, but they are not beyond the left side of delta error or margin also. So definitely these will be called as inconclusive results. Now let us look at the question which was given to us exactly based on same diagram in the exam. Let's read the statement one by one. Statement 1 says A represents superiority of new treatment. Let's look at A. This is your A. Yes, it lies on the right side of difference 0 relative risk 1. Definitely new treatment is superior. Look at statement number 2. It says I represents inferiority. I is this one. Yes, it lies to the left side of the delta or NI error margin. So this is definitely indicating inferior drug. Look at choice number 3. It says E represents non-inferior treatment. Let's look at E. E is this one. Yes, it is crossing over beyond the relative risk 1 towards the delta error or margin. Yes, it indicates non-inferior treatment. Look at choice number or statement number 4. It says C is inconclusive. Let's look at C. This is C. Now as you can see, C is lying on the right side of the relative risk 1 or difference 0 line. Definitely this is superior. So this is not inconclusive. This is a wrong statement. Inconclusive, as I told you, will be G and H because they lie beyond relative risk 1, 0 difference, and they also cross the NI error margin or delta. So answer to this question, correct statement will be choice number B, 1, 2 and 3 only. Next question friends, this was a relatively easier question. Consider the following statements. Let's look at them one by one, and then you have to decide which of the following statement is correct. Choice A says sensitivity depends on prevalence. Answer is no. Sensitivity of a test does not depend on prevalence. It is generally fixed for a test until unless we change the cutoff. Look at choice number B. Specificity depends on predictive value. No. Specificity of a test is also relatively fixed until unless we change the cutoff. Look at choice number 3 or C. In a population, if a test shows more positive in sensitivity, then there is less chance of people having the disease. No. What is the formula of sensitivity if you remember? Sensitivity is A upon A plus C. That means true positive upon true positive plus false negative into 100. That means it is showing true positive out of people who are having the disease. If true positives are high, a test shows more positive results, then actually these are more likely to have the disease. So this is also not correct. Higher the true positive, higher the sensitivity, higher the chances that a person is actually having the disease. This is the reason true positivity or sensitivity is the most useful property of the screening test. Now look at choice number 4. It says positive predictive value depends on prevalence. This is the correct answer. Friends, we know according to Bayes' theorem, predictive value whether it is positive predictive value or negative predictive value, it depends on three parameters. These are sensitivity, second is specificity, and third is prevalence of a disease in the population. When we look at separately, then we know what is the relationship between predictive value and prevalence. That depends whether we are talking of PPV or NPV. Look at this graph. This blue line is PPV, positive predictive value. This red line is negative predictive value. And when we look at prevalence, now you can easily mark that positive predictive value is directly proportional to prevalence, whereas negative predictive value is inversely proportional to prevalence. So I can say as the prevalence increase, PPV will increase. As the prevalence increase, NPV will decrease. So positive predictive value directly related, NPV inversely related to prevalence. So definitely predictive value depends on prevalence either directly or inversely. This was a sequential arrangement question. Consider the following causes of death in 1 to 4-year-old children in India. So friends, if you look at under 5, it is children below 5 years. 1 to 4 means we have excluded infancy unless we are talking of completed age. Now what is the causes of death? Most common cause of death in children below 5-year age in India: diarrhea, injury, malaria or pneumonia. Very right, it is pneumonia followed by diarrhea. See, diarrhea earlier used to be the most common cause, but then ORS and management came and we were able to save 90% of diarrheal deaths by using ORS alone. Therefore, ORS is also known as medical discovery of last century. Third common cause of death will be injury or malaria. It is injury. And fourth common in India is malaria, which we are able to slowly control in our country by using anti-malarial drugs. So answer to this question is choice number C, 4, 1, 2 and 3. This is the correct order. So friends, read the question carefully. They are talking of reducing order. Now same thing if I look in developed countries. What are the causes of death in reducing order in developed countries for 1 to 4-year age children? These are accident injury number 1, congenital anomaly number 2, malignant neoplasm number 3 cause, followed by influenza and pneumonias. Next question. This was a repeated question from a previous AIIMS paper. A study was conducted to see the effect of pulse oximeter readings in neonate without and with micropore. A plot between these two were made. What conclusion can be drawn from the graph? Friends, first let's look at this graph in a slightly zoom mode. So this is which kind of statistical data diagram? This is a scatter plot, also known as dot diagram or dot plot. It is a quantitative type of data graph where we try to establish relationship or correlation between two quantitative variables. In this particular case, you can see one variable is on x-axis, one is on y-axis, and the line which comes according to this scatter diagram is having a positive slope. So this is definitely a positive correlation. And what is the value of coefficient of correlation in positive correlation? Coefficient of correlation R will lie between 0 to +1. Here in this particular example, now we can mark the answer according to the choices given. Definitely now we can say there is a constant positive relation between two variables because the line is showing a positive slope, positive correlation. Let's move to the next question. A clinical scenario based question was asked. COVID vaccine is administered in deltoid muscle of a beneficiary. After vaccination, there is pain and weakness in the shoulder joint. Possible reason could be. Friends, first you have to understand what is SIRVA. SIRVA is shoulder injury related to vaccine administration. This could be related to any vaccine which is given intramuscular in the deltoid muscle or in the buttocks, as we used to do earlier. Now, when we look at deltoid muscle intramuscular injections, be it COVID vaccine or any other vaccine, then there are three common injuries which may be reported. Out of this, number one, most common injury reported is injury to, if you inject it too high. What will this too high injection ensure? That your needle has reached the joint or the bursa. So when the needle reaches the shoulder joint or the bursa, patient may present with pain, patient may present with bursitis, patient may present with frozen shoulder also. Weakness may also be one of the symptoms. Beside this, another possible injury could be due to, if the injection is given too far to the side. Here there is a possibility of injury to axillary nerve. Third possible site of injury, if the injection is given too low on the deltoid, there is a possibility of damage to radial nerve. Friends, please remember, when we look at nerve injuries due to intramuscular injection in deltoid, then definitely radial nerve is the most common nerve injured. But when we look at overall injury due to SIRVA, then that is mainly due to too high injection. So that will be injury to subdeltoid or subacromial bursa, which may present as pain, weakness, frozen shoulder or bursitis. Friends, then there was a clinical integration based question they asked. Flow cytometry that you read in immunochemistry also, in PNH, this is plotted. You must have seen that plot many times. This is which type of statistical diagram? Is it a combination of pie chart and dot chart? Dot chart is scatter or scatter plot. Then bar chart and dot plot, line chart and dot plot, histogram and dot plot. So let's do one thing. Let's look at the flow cytometry. How does the image look like? It actually looks like this. Now you can see the lower three diagrams, they represent histogram. Histogram is used when you have to compare single parameter, that too only in one dimension, 1D. If you look at the upper three diagrams, they represent scatter or dot plot. They are used when we have to compare two or three parameters. So they will be either used in two-dimensional form, or there is a possibility we can use them in three-dimensional form also. So friends, answer to this question is choice number D. It is having two parts. Histogram, this is one dimensional, which is used to depict single parameter. Dot or scatter plot, this is two dimensional or three dimensional, because we have to show two parameters or three parameters. Now you must know what is the use of flow cytometry. Flow cytometry is used to detect and measure the physical and chemical characteristics of a population of cells or parameters. What are the various uses of flow cytometry? Number 1, cell counting. Number 2, cell sorting. Number 3, finding out cell characteristic and function. Number 4, detect microorganism. Number 5, detect biomarkers. And number 6, detect protein engineering. Number 7, it could also be used to detect neoplasms of the blood. Friends, this was one of the easiest questions of the paper, repeated many times earlier in your exam. For a case presenting with trachoma in a PHC OPD, clinical scenario based question, SAFE strategy was applied. Which of the following is not correct? So friends, what is the full form of SAFE? That is the answer. S is surgery. This is done for two conditions, trichiasis and tropion. A is antibiotics. This mainly focuses on azithromycin single oral dose. Third, F is facial cleanliness, where focus is on eye hygiene. And E is environmental modification, where focus is on fly control and ensuring safe water supply and hygiene and sanitation. So answer to this question, they are asking which of the following is not correct. So SAFE strategy, answer is E is environmental hygiene, sanitation or modification. It does not indicate evaluation of health services. Please remember, SAFE strategy was used to achieve GET. What is GET? Global elimination of trachoma by the year 2020. Let us now move to the next question. Among the following nutrients, lactating mother needs more as compared to pregnant mothers. Friends, let's try to make a list according to the recent most nutrition guidelines of NIN, National Institute of Nutrition, in collaboration with ICMR Delhi, released in the year 2020. Now, if you compare pregnant and lactating females, then you will see requirement in pregnancy is more as compared to lactation. For which important nutrients? This includes proteins, zinc, folic acid, and the most important nutrient, iron. On the other hand, for which nutrients requirement is higher in lactation as compared to pregnancy? This includes calcium, vitamin A, carbohydrates, iodine, and vitamin C. And when we look at nutrient for which pregnancy and lactation requirements do not differ, they are absolutely same, that is vitamin D. So answer to this question is choice number A, calcium, and choice number C, vitamin A. Two answers are correct. But suppose friends, answer you have to mark is single answer. So this is a slightly tricky question. If you know, these latest nutrition guidelines have not yet appeared in any textbook of our country. So if you still go by the older nutrition guidelines which are still in place in all the textbooks of our country, that says vitamin A, not calcium, vitamin A is a better answer. Why a better answer? Because its requirement is higher in lactation as compared to pregnancy, whereas calcium, the requirement in pregnancy and lactation was earlier considered almost absolutely same. We move to the next question. Definition of triage is categorization of victims of disasters. This is on basis of what? Friends, this is actually on the basis of likelihood of survival. Although it says severity of disease or injury also, but it is mainly based on likelihood of survival. Here, all the victims of disasters are categorized into 4 categories. These are, first category is red, patients who require immediate resuscitation or limb oblique life-saving surgery in 0 to 6 hours. Category 2, yellow or blue, patients who require possibly resuscitation, limb oblique life-saving surgery in 6 to 24 hours. They can wait for some time. Category 3, low priority, green. Patients who are ambulatory or they are having minor injuries, they can wait. And category number 4 are those victims of disaster, either who are dead or who are moribund, so seriously affected that their chances of survival are minimal. So it is mainly based on chances or likelihood of survival of a person. Ideally, it should be done, trial should be done at the site of disaster itself. Then friends, there was one question from inventory management. Let's read the question. You are a medical officer of a PHC. It says 50 patients are transferred to your PHC who require antihypertensive drugs. Total 50 patients. Out of them, 40 patients need amlodipine per oral 5 mg daily. One tablet is given for amlodipine, you know. Then 10 patients who cannot take amlodipine due to some contraindication, they will be given lisinopril 10 mg per oral, again single tablet a day. Drug comes to PHC once a month. So now they are asking you, how many drugs will you order combined and what will be the reorder factor? Friends, let us first calculate the number of drugs. If you look at amlodipine, we require for 40 patients who will require one tablet a day per oral, and we require it for 30 days, making it a total of 40 into 1 into 30, 1200 tablets of amlodipine. When we look at tablet lisinopril, this is required by only 10 patients, one tablet a day for 30 days. Then we require total 10 into 1 into 30, that is 300 tablets of lisinopril. Now friends, the key important thing in this question is reorder factor. What exactly do you understand by reorder factor? This reorder factor help us calculate how much of each item we actually need to order. See, we have to maintain a proper stock, but we also have to keep a buffer so that there is no running out of supply for any drug during that period. Now, few things that you have to remember yourself. If you look at reorder factor, for drugs which are supplied monthly or items which are supplied monthly, the reorder factor is 2. Drugs or items which are supplied every 3 months, the reorder factor is 6. And those drugs or supplies which are ordered every 6 months, the reorder factor is 12. So let's look at this question now. We have to now order 1200 tablets of amlodipine per month plus 300 tablets of lisinopril per month. So total is 1500 tablets. But we are ordering it on a monthly basis. So reorder factor will be 2. So there will be an order of total of 3000 tablets along with a reorder factor of 2. So answer to this question is choice number D, 3002. Next question was quite easy, repeated. Intussusception is associated with which vaccine under National Immunization Schedule? Very right, that is rotavirus vaccine. Friends, what exactly is intussusception? As you can see in this particular image, there is telescoping of a proximal part of gut into the distal part. It has been found associated with rotaviral vaccine. If you see oral polio vaccine, it may lead to vaccine associated paralytic polio, which is mainly due to poliovirus type 3, or it may lead to vaccine derived poliovirus, which is mainly due to C type of poliovirus type 2. When we look at influenza vaccine, killed influenza vaccine is associated with Guillain-Barré syndrome. So rotavirus vaccine is associated with intussusception. How can you reduce its chances? Chances could be reduced if rotavirus vaccine is best given or started as early as possible in 6 to 12 weeks of age. Then this chances will reduce. We move to the next question. Again, this was a repeated question. Someone has been diagnosed with TB and HIV both as co-infection. What should be the treatment protocol? Friends, under National AIDS Control Program, the treatment protocol says if both have been diagnosed together, then first of all, start ATT immediately. So we will start ATT. And then we will wait for ATT treatment to stabilize. This stabilization period has been found generally takes 2 weeks, 2 months in most of the patients. And if it has been found to be stabilized, now you can start ART, antiretroviral therapy. So correct answer to this question will be choice number C. Give ATT, anti-tuberculosis therapy or TB treatment first, wait for 2 weeks to 2 months, and then treat with antiretroviral therapy. A clinical scenario based question was asked. For diagnosis of diabetes mellitus at a PHC, consider the following criteria. Number 1, HbA1c more than 8. Number 2, fasting blood sugar more than or equal to 126 mg per deciliter. Number 3, random blood sugar more than or equal to 200 mg per deciliter. And number 4, capillary blood postprandial when we are measuring the sugar level, then it should be more than or equal to 220. Which of the following is the correct combination to be used? If you look at NPCDCS program, National Program for Prevention and Control of Cardiovascular Diseases, Diabetes, Cancer and Stroke. Under this, if you look at diabetes component, screening is recommended after the age of 30 years and we use random capillary blood sample. If this random capillary blood sample value comes less than or equal to 100 milligram per deciliter, then repeat it after 3 years. Person is not diabetic. But if the value comes between 101 to 140 milligram per deciliter, then suggest lifestyle modification to the person and repeat after 1 year. But if this random capillary blood sugar comes more than 140, now it is a cause of concern. Refer this person to a primary health center for diagnosis of diabetes, where 3 different criteria are used. What are these 3 different criteria? Number 1, if fasting blood sugar is more than 126, it could be either capillary or it could be venous plasma. Or second criterion is, if you look at 2-hour postprandial value, then diagnosis of diabetes is established if it is more than 200 or 220. 200 in cases of venous plasma glucose, 220 in cases of capillary glucose level. Or the third criterion for diagnosis of diabetes at a primary health center is if it's 2-hour 75 gram glucose administration. After that, the 2-hour venous value is more than 200 milligram per deciliter. Then diagnosis of diabetes could be made definitively. Now look at this particular question. So answer to this question is, correct statement is B and D for diagnosis of diabetes at a PHC. Now what should be done to these patients who have been diagnosed with diabetes at a PHC? Number 1, suggest them lifestyle modification. Number 2, give them metformin 500 milligram BD for 4 weeks. After 4 weeks, reassess. If the random blood sugar comes even now more than 120, immediately refer to a specialist. Moving to the next question, drugs used in the treatment of severe COVID-19 infection in children. Friends, in children, COVID infection has been divided into 4 categories. This is number 1, asymptomatic, where the child was a suspect case or by chance the RT-PCR test was found positive. So if RT-PCR is positive, in such a case, no investigations and symptomatic treatment should be given. A child case is called as mild case of COVID if the child reports with cough, sore throat, and on measuring his SpO2 levels are above 94%. Again, in this case, no investigations are required, and as far as treatment is concerned, give paracetamol, soothe the throat, and monitor the child clinically. A case will be classified as moderate COVID in a child according to Ministry of Health and Family Welfare guidelines if the child is having respiratory rate elevation suggestive of pneumonia features. Cutoffs we know: more than 60, more than 50, more than 40, more than 30. In age below 2 months, 2 to 12 months, 1 to 5 years, more than 5 years, these respiratory rate per minute elevations. Pneumonia is suggestive of that. Or if the patient is having SpO2 levels of 90 to 93%. In such a moderate case of COVID in children, try to do investigations CBC, ESR, blood glucose, and chest X-ray. In these cases, as far as treatment is concerned, for management of moderate COVID-19 in children, give oxygen therapy. Target is to maintain it between 94 to 96% SpO2. Then give paracetamol to control fever. Antimicrobials, if required, they should be given. Fluid and electrolyte should be maintained properly through supplementation. And when do we classify child is having severe COVID-19 in India? If the child is a case of severe pneumonia, severe ARDS, child is having septic shock, child is grunting, child is having severe chest retractions, child is having lethargy, or child is exhibiting or showing seizures. What investigations to be carried out in such a severe COVID-19 case of a child in our country? We will like to do a complete blood count, ESR, glucose level, along with that KFT, kidney function test, LFT, liver function test, and also do CRP, C-reactive protein levels, ferritin levels, serum ferritin levels, D-dimer levels, and also do chest X-ray. Please remember, for children in our country for COVID-19, CT scan is not recommended in any stage or severity of COVID illness in children. As a part of treatment of severe COVID-19 in children, give oxygen, give corticosteroids. This will include plus minus antimicrobials if required, plus minus anticoagulants also if required. Fluid and electrolyte balance should be maintained. In such children, please remember, remdesivir has no role in management of asymptomatic, mild, moderate or severe COVID-19 infection in our country. I am talking of children. So answer to this question: for a severe COVID-19 infection, which of the following will be used as a drug? Answer is only and only steroids. Now this question was a repeated question. Which of the following are the key features of kangaroo mother care? Friends, when do we use this kangaroo mother care? Alternatively also known as warm chain. This is used for preterm low birth weight newborns who are very prone to neonatal hypothermia. So what we advise the mother, if she is in an institution, incubatory cares are available. So incubator will be used to maintain the temperature of the newborn. But if it is a home delivery, primary health center delivery, where incubators are not available to maintain temperature of the body of the newborn, then we ask the mother to keep the newborn against her body, chest especially. Mother's own body temperature will maintain the temperature of the body of the newborn. Now this kangaroo mother care has got 4 components. What are these? Number one is skin to skin contact, so that mother's body temperature can maintain the temperature of the newborn's body. Number two is adequate nutrition in the form of exclusive breastfeeding. Number three is early discharge for better care of the mother and newborn. And number four is support for the mother and the family. So correct combination, correct answer in this question is choice number B. So friends, please remember, this kangaroo mother care or warm chain was first developed by or recommended by Dr. Hector Martinez and Dr. Edgar Ray. Sequence of acid-fast bacilli staining. Friends, we are talking of National Tuberculosis Elimination Program of the country, where how do we stain sputum smear? We use ZN stain. Ziehl-Neelsen stain. This staining procedure has got a total of 7 steps. What are these? First step is fixing the smear. For this, you can pass the slide over flames 3 times, avoiding burning or desiccation, or you can use alcohol and wait for evaporation. Second step is we use carbol fusion, and you can use it to cover the slide over flame for 5 minutes. Step 3, we wash the slide with deionized water. Step number 4, here we decolorize with 3% acid alcohol. This has got 95% ethanol and 3% hydrochloric acid. As step 5, we again wash the slide, this time with water. As step number 6, we do counter staining, and we counter stain with Loeffler's methylene blue for 1 minute. And finally, the step number 7, you again wash the slide with deionized water and let it dry. Now this slide is ready for examination for acid-fast bacilli as a test for diagnosis of tuberculosis under National TB Elimination Program of our country. So friends, correct answer to this question is choice number A, carbol fusion, acid alcohol, methylene blue. And friends, after you observe this slide under microscopy and by chance acid-fast bacilli are present, how will they look like? They will look like this. You can see there will be single rod shaped acid-fast bacilli, where each bacillus has a typical beaded appearance due to pockets of mycolic acid, and this is virtually diagnostic of Mycobacterium tuberculosis in the program. And friends, finally to the last question, repeated question again. Most common mode of absorption of inorganic lead in industries lead to lead poisoning. What is the mode of absorption? Friends, most common mode is inhalation. So in lead industries, inhalation of toxic fumes of lead lead to lead poisoning. CPU, copropurifin in urine, is the screening test. ALAU, aminolevulinic acid in urine, is the diagnostic test. EDTA can be used as a drug of choice, and peripheral blood smear can be used as a prognostic test, where we are able to see microcytic hypochromic anemia as well as basophilic stippling of RBCs. Friends, this lead poisoning, also known as plumbism or saturnism, can also occur due to, beside inhalation, direct skin contact or ingestion. Please remember, direct skin contact, when it leads to lead poisoning, it is mainly due to organic lead, especially tetraethyl lead. So friends, with this we come to the end of this particular session. Before I go, I must tell you one thing. Always, always, always trust your instincts. Believe in your gut feeling, because these are the ones which have brought you so far. So trust yourself, stay safe, stay healthy. Wishing you lots of health, lots of success. Best of luck.